Right, so today we don't need much of an intro. Manchester United need to beat Athletic Bilbao in the Europa League. Today, I'm going to tell you how they can do that. So just for the sake of making an interesting video, we are going to focus on Manchester United on the ball and looking to attack Bilbao, rather than the boring defensive stuff. And to be honest, this does make a lot of sense. Athletic Bilbao aren't a team that typically dominate possession, certainly not in La Liga, but they are one of the best defensive teams. In fact, the best defensive team from a statistical point of view. They've conceded the least goals. They also have the second best O-loss in La Liga. Now, you might be thinking, what on earth does that mean? But it's the opponent's danger possession losses, which means basically Bilbao force the opposition to lose the ball in dangerous areas on a regular basis. So that is what we are going to be looking at today. But not just the high press from Bilbao, we will also be looking at the mid block and the low block as well to figure out how United can find a way through. So naturally, I think it makes sense to start off with the high press because Manchester United will probably look to play the ball out from the back in this game. And if we want to play through Bilbao, then it starts at the back. We have to be secure in deep phases. So the question is, how are Bilbao going to approach this? How are they going to press us? And to find this out, I decided to watch their last two games that they played against a back three. So that was against Rangers in the Europa League and against Osasuna in La Liga. And the way that Bilbao approached this was slightly different in the two games, although I do see areas where United will have some success. So we'll start off with when Bilbao were playing against Rangers, who played in a flat back three like this. So Rangers used their three central defenders along the back like this. What we saw from Bilbao was a 4-2-3-1 pressing shape. So you've got your four along the back there, you've got your two in here, you've got your three in here, and you've got your one up front. But importantly, what Bilbao were doing was actually almost exclusively only pressing with these four in this narrow position. So when Rangers were dropping one of their midfielders deeper like this, and let's say the other midfielder moved a little bit higher, Rangers had the three centre-backs. They had their central midfielder, so far it's a pretty even matchup, but they also had their wing-backs coming into these positions as well, because the Bilbao full-backs, this player here and this player here, didn't really want to come high and join the press, so they stayed a little bit deeper, and Rangers actually had so many moments where they should have been able to play out from the back. They just lacked the quality or really the intention to do so. But there were moments where they could have quite comfortably, outnumbered in positions, we can see it in a scenario like this, they should have been able to find that ball into midfield and then work the ball wide. So that is one way that United could approach this, use the wing back. Now that is one way for United to approach this, but not the only way, especially when we consider the fact that United don't line up that way with the back three, because we know that our middle centre-back is quite likely to go into midfield. So our two centre-backs will drop a little bit deeper like this. Our wing-backs will come into more like full-back positions. One of our centre-backs is going to come from here into midfield, and our other central midfielder is going to push just a little bit higher into these zones here. How will Bilbao look to approach these situations? Well, interestingly enough, they actually faced this in their game against Osasuna. And again, what Bilbao looked to do was press in a 4-2-3-1 shape. But interestingly, once again, the back four stay at the back. We can see they want to outnumber the last line. That means they are going to have less players pressing high up the pitch. And in that game, it was often the front two like this would drop onto the two pivot players, and the two wingers would move higher and wider onto the centre-backs like this. But once again, what this means is that the wing-backs, who have now dropped into full-back zones, are free on the two sides of the pitch. And particularly from the goalkeeper, there is an outball from Onana to the wing-back in this position. So in the first phase, it won't be easy. Bilbao will come with a great intensity, but I think United should overload them. So it's just about technical quality, really. Now, as we move into the next phase, which is more of this mid-block area here, where United have got the ball and are trying to progress through the pitch, things start to change, because for me, this is where I view Bilbao as being near their strongest, in the mid-block shape. It's a very, very good shape. And I say shape, it's actually sort of two shapes, because of their attacking midfielder. Now, there's currently an uncertainty over who the attacking midfielder will be for this game due to injury, but in terms of the tactical role, it shouldn't change too much. What we will see from this attacking midfielder is they will play on the left side of a front two. So you have the striker up here, and the attacking midfielder will be in this position here. However, he won't stay there, because sometimes he will drop deeper into this 4-5-1 shape. So the question is, how can United use that to their advantage? How can we use the positioning of this player to try and move the ball forward? Well, if there's two shapes, then there's two ways of progressing the ball. So we'll start off with the 4-4-2. This tends to occur when the middle centre-back for United, let's say Harry Maguire, will have the ball here and will move the ball across. What we will see is this player, the attacking midfielder, the 10, stepping forward to form a front two with his striker here, and Bilbao will go into a flat 4-4-2, as we can see with the lines here. So how can Manchester United move the ball through this? Well, naturally, the weakness of a 4-4-2 is the space in front of the midfield and behind the midfield. So what we need from United is a flexible, rotating midfield, a fluid midfield rather than a fixed shape. So in these moments, playing with a solo pivot could actually be extremely beneficial. So could someone like Casemiro come into the pivot here, and let's say Bruno Fernandes or perhaps Ugarte moves a little bit higher and this player moves across? Can we create these sort of situations here where we're actually playing with a sort of diamond in this position? And you can see this player here has space, but as does this player here. This is when Manchester United can use that jump. So the ball comes across, the midfielder steps out, this midfielder steps out. Now we've got spaces for Manchester United to try and play in. That is one way that we could move the ball forward. The other way is when Bilbao are in their 4-5-1. Now the 4-5-1 is extremely compact. The fullbacks are quite narrow, like so. And you can see it's quite difficult to play through. There's lots of Bilbao players behind the ball here. Very, very tough to play through. However, naturally, once again, there are two holes against this shape. And it's either side of the holding midfielder. So this space here and this space here. So how can Manchester United occupy that space? Well, actually, it happens pretty naturally with United's sort of default starting formation, which of course is the 3-4-3. So let's move United back into the initial shape, the 3-4-3. We can see that it naturally gets us a player here in this space and a player here in this space. So United, once again, have the potential to progress the ball in these areas, because when the striker is higher like that, we can see that Manchester United have a 4 versus 3 in this zone. What United need to do, really need to do though here, is be bold and be brave. It's why personally, I wouldn't go with Casemiro and Ugarte in this position, because I think they're quite happy to keep it safe at times. I think if you put Bruno Fernandes in that role, he will really try to drive central progression, because when he picks the ball up in these positions, he wants to take a risk. So Ugarte here might pick the ball up and play wide, whereas I think Bruno Fernandes will try and find that pass in there, or perhaps that pass in there. For me, that is something that United need to do. And in terms of the personnel in these 10 spots, naturally I think Garnacho will take up one of them, but I would hope the other is either Mason Mount or Kobbie Mainoo, with Bruno Fernandes playing deeper. And again, I think this is a way for United to gain territory, move forward, and force Bilbao into the low block. Now, Bilbao's low block is where things start to get really spicy, because if we just look at that shape, it's impossible to play through. Once again, it's a 4-4-2, and there are so many players really close to each other, really compact. And what is fantastic about this Bilbao side is that they all defend together. So if the ball goes to one side, the whole defensive unit will shift over to that side. The ball then goes to the other side, they'll shift across again. However, you can take advantage of that. These are humans. When you ask them to shift from right to left constantly throughout a game, there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be miscommunication in certain moments, and spaces could potentially open up. And United need to take advantage of this. Bilbao will very likely be incredibly narrow in this sort of shape. So what I would ask United to do is probe down one side of the pitch, let's say with the right centre-back here. Perhaps this could be Mazraoui, that would make sense, or someone like that. You draw the opposition over. What we need to try and do is draw Bilbao across the pitch, and they will do that. They are a defensive unit. All these guys move together. You can see they've still got their 4-4-2 shape. It's incredibly compact. There is almost no way for Manchester United to move the ball through here, because if you go into the pocket, they're going to jump, they're going to be aggressive. So aggressive in the way that they jump from this block, it's difficult to play through that zone. However, if you've got game changers in midfield that are willing to take a risk on the ball to try and get it to the other side, then you could have some success. And again, that's why I like a duo of Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes in midfield, because they do have that long passing range. Now, the way that this long passing range can be utilised is actually pretty straightforward. It's something that Real Madrid did incredibly well in their win just a couple of weeks ago. What they looked to do was overload one side like this, get the ball over here, pick the ball up and switch it to the far side. Very, very simple stuff. I'm not asking for anything too complex. What's important here is how Bilbao will react, because like I've said, they are a good defensive side. They all shift across as a team, but how they do it is important, because as you play this switch, let's say Casemiro picks the ball up, he switches it out to our wing back. This might be Patrick Dorgu, it might be Harry Amas, it might be Mazraoui, I don't know. What's going to happen is the right back is going to come across, opening up this space in here, but they're going to close that space. The centre back will come over, but now there's going to be a space in here. Well, there's not, because one of the central midfielders will drop deeper into that space. So it is difficult to break Bilbao down, because every time you pull one player out of position, someone else is going to cover. But let's just run through that 1 second again to highlight a weakness. So let's put the players back in position. Bilbao are in a back four. The ball gets switched from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. This player comes across, which means this player has to come across, which means this player has to drop in. If Manchester United now attack this with an underlapping run into this sort of position here, or this player can dribble and this player can overlap round the outside, because this central midfielder here, remember, this is a midfielder, because he's dropped deeper into this position, into the back line, a space is going to open up on the edge of the penalty area for Manchester United to attack. This space here is something that United can get at. And obviously, just a couple of days ago, we were talking about United getting better at attacking this shape, this space. That's why I'm quite confident coming into this game, because I think in the first phase, we can overload Bilbao. I think in the second phase, it's about being patient, but moving the ball quickly from side to side, but also through the Bilbao shape. And then in the final third, if United utilise the width well, which is one of the only things we're actually good at doing in the final third, then I think we can break them down. Now, of course, I've explained this in quite a basic way. This is a load of counters on a board, whereas we're actually talking about 22 humans going toe-to-toe. It's not going to be quite this simple. However, from a structural point of view, I do think there are ways in which United can have the advantage in this game. I am quite confident that we can attack Bilbao and hurt them, despite their brilliant defensive record. It will take patience, and of course we have to be wary of the threat that they will possess, not only in transitions, but also in settled possession as well. If you want to see a video on that side of the game, how United should defend in this tie, then let me know and I'll have it done before the second leg. But in terms of today, I think we're finished there. Bilbao are a very good defensive outfit, but just like every football team, they're not perfect. There are holes that United can exploit, and I'm reasonably confident that we've got the players to do exactly that, to find a space, to exploit it, and put the ball in the back of the net. It's a tricky job, it won't be easy, but I think United can get it done. But those are just my thoughts. I want to hear yours in the comments down below. But apart from that, we are finished for today. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.